Elena Whitford once believed that love, if handled carefully, could last a lifetime. When she married Marcus Whitford, she carried that belief like a quiet promise, something fragile yet precious. In the early years, Marcus had been attentive in small ways, remembering how she took her coffee, texting her when meetings ran late, reaching for her hand in crowded places as if the world might steal her away. Elena thought those gestures meant safety. She did not realize how easily such habits could fade, that Marcus's ambitions grew faster than their marriage. Promotions, networking dinners, and endless late nights began to replace the evenings they once shared. Elena adjusted without complaint. She learned to eat alone, to fall asleep to the glow of her phone, to wake up before him and return home after him. Each compromise felt temporary, a sacrifice made for a future they would enjoy together. She told herself that marriages required patience, and patience was something she had in abundance. What Elena did not see was how Marcus had begun to measure his worth through admiration rather than commitment. At his firm, he was praised for his ideas and encouraged to think bigger, aim higher, want more. Among the people who noticed him was Nora Blake, a colleague with an easy smile and a habit of listening closely. She laughed at Marcus's jokes, validated his frustrations, and spoke as if she understood pressures Elena never mentioned. Their conversations were harmless at first, at least in Marcus's mind. They talked about work, then about dreams, then about disappointments he never voiced at home that tea the dinner table. Marcus grew quieter. Elena noticed the way he checked his phone, how his answers became shorter, how his eyes drifted elsewhere, even when she spoke. She tried to bridge the distance by asking about his day, planning small surprises, cooking meals he once loved. Marcus responded politely, but the warmth was gone. He had begun to see Elena's steadiness as dullness, her loyalty as predictability. Without meaning to, he compared her to the excitement he felt at work, and she always seemed to fall short. Elena sensed the change long before she understood it. There was a heaviness in the house, an absence that could not be explained by long hours alone. She wondered if she had failed him somehow, if she had grown too quiet, too ordinary. Yet every time she considered confronting Marcus, she stopped herself. She feared that naming the distance might make it permanent. Instead, she chose silence, believing that love sometimes meant enduring uncertainty without protest. The cracks widened quietly. Marcus forgot their anniversary, excusing it with exhaustion. He canceled weekend plans because of unexpected obligations. When Elena suggested taking a short trip together, Marcus dismissed the idea, saying it was not the right time. To him, their marriage had begun to feel like another responsibility rather than a refuge. He did not notice how Elena's smile thinned, how her questions turned into statements, how she stopped waiting by the window when he came home late. Nora Blake never crossed a visible line, but her presence followed Marcus home in invisible ways. He found himself sharing thoughts with her that he no longer shared with his wife. When he felt misunderstood, he sought Nora's reassurance. When work stressed him, it was her messages he checked first. Without acknowledging it, Marcus had already begun to withdraw his emotional loyalty from Elena. He convinced himself that nothing serious was happening, that he was still a good husband because he had not done anything unforgivable. Elena, however, felt the absence keenly. Love, she realized, was not only about fidelity in action, but also in attention. Marcus was physically present, yet emotionally distant, as if part of him lived elsewhere. One evening, after another quiet dinner, Elena asked him if he was happy. The question surprised him. He answered vaguely, saying he was tired and overwhelmed. Elena nodded and did not press further. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when asking for honesty had begun to feel like asking for too much. The decision to divorce did not come with shouting or accusations. It arrived one morning over coffee, delivered in Marcus's calm, practiced voice. He said they had grown apart, that they wanted different things, that it would be better to end things before resentment took root. Elena listened without interrupting. She had imagined this moment in her darker thoughts. Yet when it came, it felt unreal, like watching someone else's life unfold. She asked him if there was someone else. Marcus denied it quickly, too quickly, and she chose not to argue. Signing the papers felt like erasing a version of herself. Elena left the house with little more than her personal belongings and memories she did not know where to place. Marcus watched her go with a sense of relief he mistook for freedom. He believed he was choosing honesty, unaware of how much damage had already been done. To him, the marriage was something that no longer fit, and letting it go felt like progress. In the quiet days that followed, Elena began to understand how deeply she had been holding herself together. The silence of her new apartment was different from the silence she had known before. This one did not carry expectation. It carried possibility and fear in equal measure. She mourned the marriage privately, allowing herself to grieve what she had given and what she had hoped for. She did not contact Marcus, and he did not reach out to her. As weeks passed, Elena focused on rebuilding her life, unaware that her body was already preparing a truth that would change everything. For now, she believed the hardest part was over. She did not know that the end of her marriage was only the beginning of a story that would force all of them to confront the weight of their choices and the cost of realizing their value too late. The first sign that something was different came to Elena Whitford on an ordinary morning, one she had planned to spend revising her resume and sending out applications. She dismissed the nausea at first, blaming stress and irregular meals. But when the feeling returned day after day, quiet and insistent, she could no longer ignore it. Sitting alone in her small bathroom, staring at the test in her trembling hand, Elena felt the world narrow to a single breath. The result was unmistakable. She was pregnant. For a long moment, Elena did not cry. She simply sat there, absorbing the weight of the truth. The timing felt cruel, almost ironic. Her marriage had ended, her future was uncertain, and yet a new life had begun inside her. Instinctively, her thoughts went to Marcus Whitford. He had a right to know, a voice whispered. Another voice, steadier and firmer, answered back. He had chosen to leave. She would not chase him with news that could bind her to regret. Elena chose silence, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. She told herself she would decide later what to say and when. For now, she needed clarity, stability, and strength. She scheduled a doctor's appointment, listened carefully to every word, and asked practical questions. The doctor's calm reassurance steadied her nerves, but when Elena stepped back onto the street, the reality of motherhood settled in fully. She was no longer rebuilding just for herself. The days that followed were demanding. Elena searched for work with renewed urgency, aware that independence was no longer optional. When she received an interview invitation from Cross Enterprises, a respected corporate firm, she hesitated only briefly before accepting. The position was challenging, but it offered security and growth. She prepared meticulously, dressing simply, determined to be judged by her competence rather than her circumstances. Julian Cross noticed Elena Whitford before he learned her name. As CEO, he was accustomed to reading people quickly, spotting confidence or pretense within minutes. Elena stood out not because she was loud or assertive, but because she was composed. She answered questions with clarity, acknowledged what she did not know, and spoke with a quiet sincerity that suggested resilience rather than ambition. Julian approved her hire without hesitation, sensing that she would bring something steady to the team. Elena immersed herself in work. The structure of deadlines and responsibilities gave her mind something to hold on to, and for a while, she almost forgot the uncertainty waiting at home. She kept her pregnancy private, choosing loose clothing and careful movements. Her colleagues saw her as reserved but reliable, someone who worked diligently without drawing attention. Julian observed her progress from a distance, impressed by how quickly she adapted. The strain of keeping her secret, however, took its toll. One afternoon, after hours of focused work and skipped meals, Elena felt the room tilt. The fluorescent lights blurred, and a wave of dizziness swept over her. She barely registered the sound of her chair scraping the floor before strong hands steadied her. Julian was there, his expression alert rather than alarmed. Guiding her to sit, he did not ask intrusive questions. He called for water, cleared the room, and waited until color returned to her face. When Elena finally admitted she was pregnant, she braced herself for judgment or concern framed as inconvenience. Instead, Julian listened, his response measured and respectful. He asked if she needed medical attention, if she felt safe, if there was anyone she wished to call. His professionalism reassured her more than sympathy ever could. From that day forward, Julian ensured Elena's workload was manageable without making her feel diminished. He adjusted schedules discreetly and insisted she take breaks when needed. There was no gossip, no whispered speculation encouraged under his watch. Elena felt something unfamiliar at work. Safety. Not the fragile safety she once felt in marriage, but a grounded assurance that her circumstances did not reduce her worth. Meanwhile, Marcus Whitford settled into the illusion of freedom he had sought. The quiet apartment felt liberating at first, empty of compromise and expectation. His connection with Nora Blake lost its novelty quickly, revealing itself as shallow when stripped of secrecy. Work continued as usual, but something restless lingered beneath his satisfaction. He told himself it was adjustment, nothing more. Elena did not cross Marcus's mind often, but when she did, it was as a chapter already closed. He did not know she was carrying his child, did not imagine her navigating doctor visits alone or learning to balance exhaustion with determination. Their lives had diverged completely, or so he believed. At T-Cross Enterprises, Elena's confidence grew alongside her sense of independence. She found herself smiling more easily, speaking with assurance in meetings, trusting her instincts. Julian noticed the shift, appreciating not just her work ethic, but her integrity. He admired how she never sought special treatment, how she accepted support without entitlement or shame. In quiet moments, he wondered about the story that had shaped her, but he did not pry point one evening. As Elena prepared to leave, Julian caught sight of her reflection in the glass wall of his office. She rested a hand briefly on her abdomen, a protective gesture that revealed both vulnerability and resolve. The image stayed with him long after she left. He understood then that Elena was not merely enduring change. She was embracing it. As Elena walked out into the cool evening air, she felt a cautious optimism settle within her. She was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she was building. She did not know how the future would unfold, or how long she could keep the truth from Marcus. For now, she focused on each step forward, unaware that the life she was creating would soon draw the past back into sharp and unavoidable focus. Elena Whitford's pregnancy could no longer be hidden, though she had never intended it to be a secret forever. Her figure changed subtly at first, then unmistakably, and with it came a new rhythm to her days. She moved with care, planned her time thoughtfully, and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even her. At Cross Enterprises, her colleagues adapted naturally, guided by Julian Cross's quiet insistence that professionalism included respect. Julian became more present in Elena's work life, not in a way that invited speculation, but in a way that conveyed trust. He checked in on her progress, ensured she was included in key discussions, and made it clear that her contributions mattered. When meetings ran long, he ended them early rather than letting fatigue take its toll. His concern was never theatrical. It was precise and restrained, the kind that did not ask for gratitude. Elena noticed the difference between this and the care she had once begged for at home. With Julian, she did not have to explain herself or justify her needs. He anticipated them without assumption, offering support without expectation. Slowly, a sense of dignity returned to her life, one she had not realized she had lost. She began to understand that being cherished did not require grand gestures, only consistent regard. Outside the office, Elena prepared quietly for motherhood. She attended appointments alone, read late into the night, and allowed herself moments of fear without judgment. There were times she wondered if she should tell Marcus Whitford the truth, But each time the thought arose, it was followed by the memory of his calm detachment on the morning he left. She decided that if he were no, it would be because he discovered it himself, not because she needed something from him. That discovery came sooner than she expected. Marcus heard Elena's name in passing during a client meeting, spoken casually by someone praising Cross Enterprises for its leadership culture. The mention stirred a vague curiosity. Later that evening, he searched online, finding a company profile that included a photograph from a recent charity event. In the background, unmistakable even from a distance, was Elena, her hand resting protectively on her stomach as Julian stood beside her, attentive and composed. The image unsettled Marcus more than he cared to admit. He studied it longer than necessary, telling himself it was coincidence, that appearances could deceive. It's something about the way Julian's body angled toward Elena, the way his expression softened as he looked at her, suggested intention rather than obligation. Marcus closed his laptop, irritation tightening his chest. He reminded himself that Elena's life was no longer his concern, but the thought lingered. In the days that followed, Marcus found himself replaying small moments from his marriage. Elena waiting up late, Elena asking if he was happy, Elena accepting his distance without complaint. He wondered, uneasily, when she had grown strong enough to stand beside a man like Julian Cross, and why he had failed to notice her strength when it had been his to protect. At T. Cross Enterprises, Elena's pregnancy became an unspoken part of her presence, acknowledged without commentary. Julian ensured she had flexibility, but he also challenged her professionally, trusting her judgment and relying on her insight. Their conversations remained focused on work, yet there was an undercurrent of mutual respect that deepened with time. Elena felt seen in a way that was both comforting and disorienting. Rumors eventually reached Marcus through Nora Blake, whose voice carried more curiosity than concern. She mentioned hearing that Elena was expecting and that Julian Cross had taken a personal interest in her well-being. Nora framed it lightly, almost dismissively, but Marcus heard what was left unsaid. He asked questions he pretended were casual, piecing together fragments that formed an unsettling picture. The possibility that the child might be his surfaced slowly, like a truth rising through water. Marcus counted weeks, recalled dates, and felt the certainty settle heavily within him. The realization did not bring clarity or resolve. It brought regret sharpened by envy. He imagined Elena facing pregnancy alone and felt a pang of guilt he could not easily silence. He imagined Julian stepping into a role Marcus had abandoned and felt something fracture inside him. When Marcus finally saw Elena in person, it was by chance. She was leaving a cafe near her office, her movements deliberate, her expression calm. Julian walked beside her, carrying her bag without comment. He paused to ensure she stepped safely onto the curb, his attention focused entirely on her. Elena smiled up at him, a small, genuine smile that Marcus had not seen in years. Marcus stood frozen across the street, unnoticed. He understood, then, that what he was witnessing was not performance or obligation. It was care, freely given and fully received. The life Elena was building no longer revolved around absence or compromise. It revolved around stability, respect, and a future Marcus could not claim. As Julian guided Elena toward their car, Marcus felt the weight of his choices press down on him. He realized that regret, once delayed, arrived without mercy. Watching Elena walk away, protected and unafraid, he knew that confronting the past was no longer optional. What he did not yet know was whether the truth, once spoken, would bring resolution, or confirm that some losses could never be undone. Marcus Whitford did not approach Elena Whitford immediately after that day. Regret, he discovered, did not arrive with courage. It lingered, heavy and unsettling, forcing him to confront memories he had long dismissed as insignificant. Each night, he replayed the quiet moments he had overlooked, the way Elena used to wait for him, the patience she wore like armor, the trust he had accepted without care. Now that trust belonged to someone else, and the realization hollowed him. When Marcus finally asked to meet, his message was careful, almost formal. Elena read it twice before responding. She did not feel anger, nor did she feel relief. What rose instead was a calm resolve. She agreed to meet him in a public place, choosing neutrality over nostalgia. When she arrived, Marcus stood to greet her, his gaze drawn instantly to her pregnancy. He looked at her as though seeing her clearly for the first time. They spoke cautiously at first. Marcus apologized, but not with the confidence of someone seeking forgiveness, rather with the uncertainty of someone who feared it was no longer possible. He admitted his selfishness, his emotional absence, the way he had mistaken attention for love. Elena listened without interrupting. She did not correct him or soften his words. When he finally asked the question he had been circling, his voice faltered. The child, she confirmed quietly, was his. The truth landed without relief. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility press against the weight of loss, and neither offered comfort. He spoke of regret, of wanting to do better, of realizing too late what he had destroyed. Elena met his gaze steadily and told him that regret, while sincere, did not rewrite history. She had learned to survive the end of their marriage, and survival had taught her clarity. Elena explained that she did not hate him. Hatred required energy she had already spent on healing. She told him that motherhood had changed her priorities, that stability mattered more than apologies, and that love could not be revived simply because its absence was now visible. Marcus asked, carefully, if there was still a chance for them. The question revealed his lingering belief that remorse might be enough. Elena's answer was gentle but firm. She said she would not return to a place where she had once felt invisible. The future she was building demanded honesty, consistency, and respect, not promises shaped by fear of loss. She did not deny him the right to be a father, but she refused to offer him the role of a husband again. The boundary she set was clear, and it did not waver. When Marcus left, the cafe felt quieter than before. Elena placed a hand on her stomach, grounding herself in the life growing within her. She felt no triumph in Marcus's pain, only acceptance. Closure, she realized, did not come from reconciliation, but from choosing oneself without bitterness. Julian Cross did not ask for details when Elena told him she had met Marcus. He listened, his attention focused, his presence steady. When she finished, he told her he respected her strength and her decisions. He did not promise a future or demand a place in her life. Instead, he offered something simpler and rarer: patience. He made it clear that whatever role he played would be on her terms. As the months passed, Elena's life settled into a rhythm shaped by intention rather than reaction. She continued working until her maternity leave began, supported quietly and consistently by Julian. Marcus remained at a distance, present only when necessary, learning to accept the consequences of his choices. The regret he carried became a silent teacher, reminding him of what neglect could cost. That on a quiet evening, Elena stood by her window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. She thought about the woman she had been at the beginning of her marriage and the woman she had become. Loss had shaped her, but it had not defined her. Love, she understood now, was not proven by words spoken too late, but by care shown when it mattered most. As she turned away from the glass, her phone lit up with a message from Julian, asking simply if she was feeling well. Elena smiled. Acalm, un guarde smile. The past no longer held her in place. The future remained unwritten, full of possibility, and this time, she was prepared to choose it with open eyes.